All right, greetings everyone. We're very glad to have you here today for our final Lunch and Learn program of this school year. I'm going to share a presentation and we can get started. As I said, this is our final Lunch and Learn. We've been running these programs throughout this academic school year, and we just really want to thank all of our participants and all of our presenters who have shared their knowledge with our community. We've really had a lot of great success, and we're hoping to move this forward next year. So we would really like to connect with you on what you really enjoyed about the program and ways we can improve it. So watch your email, because the Zoom survey that will come following the program will give you an opportunity to let us know how we can improve the program next year. This visual just displays the topics that we covered this year. We really tapped into the knowledge and expertise of our clinician team. So we had presentations that focused on the speech and language and communication area, education, psychology. So I'd really like to continue that next year. And in a moment, I'll put in the chat, all of these presentations are available on our website for you to view if you were not able to attend on the date that we ran them, but they can all be viewed on our website. All right, today's presentation is an interdisciplinary presentation. So our clinician team came together to put this presentation together as a team. So it doesn't just reflect one area, but all of us contributed to the presentation. Not all of us are presenting today because we thought that might get a little bit crazy, but we just want to let you know that our speech language pathology and communication team participated. That was Christina Gulati, who you'll see in a few moments, as well as Adrian Koenig and Serena Ure. As well as our psychologist, Dr. Amy Zarkowski. And for education and literacy, myself, I'm Sarah Brandt, and Maddie, I put Maddie Wren. I keep doing that. It's Maddie Gibson. She's our teacher of the deaf and reading specialist. And I would be remiss not to thank our interpreting team, who are wearing their interpreting hats at this moment, but our very, very deep thanks to Shauna and Sue for providing communication access throughout this program. We really, really appreciate it. Sometimes my Google seems to get stuck. Give me just a moment here. All right. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Christina, who is going to be jumping in with some tips and strategies for how not to just survive the summer, but to thrive.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of the reasons that summer is great and some of the reasons that summer can also be challenging for our students who are complex communicators and or who are deaf and hard of hearing. So summer is coming soon. We're going to talk about best practices, like I said, things that make it great, things that make it challenging, and then also some summer strategies for families. So we have communication strategies from our SLPs. We have social, play, and friendship strategies from our psychologist. And we have literacy and learning strategies from our educators. So what makes summer great? There are vacations, trips, museums, more time spent with family, more time building memories, and also new experiences that help to build schema. So this concept comes from Piaget's theory of development, which states that children construct a series of schemata based on the interactions that they experience to help them understand the world. So these new experiences are helping our children's development. Multi-sensory experiences are a big part of summer. So if you think about going to the beach or going to an amusement park, think about all the different senses that are going to be engaged. So tactile, auditory, visual. There's water, there's sand at the beach, there's great smells at the amusement park, such as popcorn, cotton candy, all those things that our children enjoy. We get to share joyful moments with our families. We get to be outside more, and there are opportunities to communicate with new partners. And then what makes summer challenging for our children? Changes in routine. So there might be no school or there might be a shortened school day, which can also be very challenging for parents who have to scramble to coordinate childcare. There can be limited access to equipment in the pool or at the beach. So for example, you can't wear your hearing aids when you're swimming. You can't bring your high-tech AEC device to the beach because it might get wet, you might get sand on it. There's a lot of unstructured time in the summer, which can be difficult. And there's a lot of new people and new places, which can also be challenging for some of our children. So we came up with 3 themes for best practices this summer. The first theme is presence. So being in the moment, sharing experiences with your child, and reducing demands, such as asking questions. Just being there. Our second theme is access. So providing access to language, access to equipment, such as hearing equipment, AEC devices, AEC systems, and to fun. And lastly, grace. So giving yourself grace, giving your kids grace, letting kids be kids, and remembering that downtime and unscheduled time are important. There can be so much pressure these days to have the perfect vacation that you post on social media, but trying to remember that everybody only shows the highlight reel on social media, and it's rarely the everyday that you're seeing. So in terms of presence, we recommend being in the moment and then talking about it later. So for example, modeling language with your child without the expectation of a response. So you can model when you two are enjoying something together and not require them to give you an answer or ask them a million questions. You can observe what your child enjoys and what interests them most during an experience. And many times it is not what you would have thought it would be. And you can also take pictures in the moment and then revisit and discuss the experience later on, which is a great opportunity for language. In terms of access, like I said, it can be very challenging to bring your communication equipment everywhere in the summertime. So some ideas that we have are, for example, if you have AAC systems for communication in the sun, you can find some shade, you can bring an umbrella or put up a board around the device as a shield. In terms of using AAC in the water, you can use low-tech waterproof laminated icons, such as we were showing in these pictures, to use it at the pool or in the beach. And I would recommend for parents that don't have access to Boardmaker software, which is what these are made with, these symbols, you can always reach out to your SLP and ask them if they would be able to help make you some icons for the summer. I had a student who every year went to a camp in California, and I was happy to make symbols for that trip for her. And then if there are no visuals, that's fine. You can use objects. So offer, a pool noodle or an inner tube. Which one do you want? You can offer concept choices. Do you want the big tube or the little tube? Do you want a wet towel or a dry towel? And then for grace, you can take the pressure off yourself by bringing fewer toys. One deep, creative interaction can foster a lot more language and learning than 30 surface level interactions. Like I said before, you might be surprised by what your child ends up being interested in, and you can just go with that. Activities don't need to be structured or Pinterest worthy. Like in the picture, things can get messy, which is great. And remembering that language happens everywhere. There's opportunities to model language everywhere. And so our overall message in terms of communication this summer is to let kids be kids.
All right, thank you so much, Christina. I'm going to be moving on here to speak about friendship and play. I apologize for the jumpy slideshow. It seems as though sometimes my Google slide seems to get frozen. So my apologies on that. But anyway, so these slides were put together as by our team, but guided by our psychologist, Dr. Amy Zarkowski, who happens to be traveling internationally, attending some conferences and giving some keynote talks, really supporting all of this stuff that you're learning about today. So we want to give a shout out to Dr. Amy for supporting us, putting this together, and knowing that she's spreading the good word in Europe right now, actually. So regarding friendship and play, when we think about presence for friendship and play, both, between ourselves and our child, or our child and their sibling, or our child and a friend group, play is really, really important. It's not just how children learn about the world, it's also a basic human right. This is along with other essential human rights like freedom of thought, freedom of expression, freedom from violence or abuse. These come from the UN High Commission. Play is really important. So be present in the play that you engage in with your child. It's part of their development. We encourage you to allow children to direct the play activities, which I am a parent, and sometimes, especially when my daughter was quite young, that was hard because I kind of wanted to do it my way. But let your child be the leader. That will give them opportunities to practice their decision making, helps build their confidence. And similar to the tips on communication that Christina shared, it might give you opportunities to learn about things that your child's interested in that you might not have known about. So let your child direct the play. And in some cases, putting some parameters around this as a family can be helpful. For example, a weekly family game night, or a regular craft time, or no tech Tuesdays where everybody's phone or tablets go away and you focus on maybe some other hands-on interactive type play. Those can be helpful for some families, but you can also just fill in those sort of natural moments that happen throughout your day as well. When we think about access in terms of friendship and play, this can be really important to encourage your child to engage in their local community. So for example, if a child is deaf or hard of hearing or has complex communication needs, their opportunity to engage with kids on the playground in the local neighborhood, or if all the cousins are getting together, might look different than another child. So things that we might recommend to help support the child in this case would be thinking about what are the kinds of things that the kids are going to do. And if you notice that, every time we go to the playground, they're playing, this particular game or tag or whatever it might be, provide some context for those games. So teach your child how to play them. And that way they can have practice, they can have the language and vocabulary around that, you're it, my turn, gotcha, all of those things. This is a little bit of a callback to some of our previous Lunch and Learns where we talked about incidental learning. Children may not pick up on those rules of the game if they haven't been directly involved before. So if they're on the playground and other kids are playing that game, just because they're there, they might not pick up on those rules in the same way that another child might. So take the chance to play that game as a family and help your child learn the routine so they can then engage in the game with other children at the playground or library or museum or beach or wherever you might be. Another tip we're going to share is encouraging communication and shared responsibility. So if it's a family get together and there's some cousins or extended family members, teach those children how to get your child's attention. Teach them some basic signs. Maybe it's related to whatever activity you might be doing, or pool-based things, or maybe you're at the beach, or maybe you're hanging out in the neighborhood, whatever it might be. Encourage the other children to take responsibility to be a part of the communication with your child. It's not entirely your child's responsibility. It should be a shared responsibility. And our final tip for friendship and play related to grace is that summer should be fun. And it's a great time to try new things and interact with new people and be in new contexts. And yes, it can be challenging and it maybe can be a little bit scary, but it can also be really fun and rewarding and give you all sorts of new things to communicate about and talk about with your family. So these can be simple things like sitting outside in the evening and greeting people as they walk by. Maybe you engage in your local community if there's a baseball game or soccer game or whatever it might be. Go cheer for the players at the game. And remember, you don't need to have a packed schedule. It's easy to try to fill all those moments, but that downtime is important, and it can encourage more creative play, which is easy to say. It's more difficult in the moment when you're the parent of the kid who's saying, I'm bored, there's nothing to do. I've been that parent as well, so I know how challenging that can be. Sometimes the less is more advice that Christina provided, pull out a few things and have them visually accessible. And then instead of having a whole, shelf full of toys, maybe pull out a few, and that can encourage your child to not be overwhelmed and unable to make a choice about what to do, but give a few options, limit the options, and see what they come up with. So our big takeaway related to friendship and play is that it's all about proximity. This means proximity to you. So, making a real effort to be present with your child in that play relationship. Proximity to other kids. So it can be about setting opportunities to go to the beach or to, the playground or wherever it might be, where there are other kids who your child can interact with. And oftentimes, I think it's harder for us as adults to, develop relationships and friendships, but honestly, just take your kid and plunk them in the sandbox, and maybe with a little bit of guidance and a little bit of communication support, a lot of that, because of the proximity, those friendships and play will start to develop naturally. Next, I'm going to pass it off to Maddie, who's going to be sharing some information on language and literacy.
Hello. We're going to follow the same kind of format for language and literacy as well. So the language and literacy itself could be so overwhelming, and it feels like you have to do 1,000 skills to make sure your kids are, maintaining where they're at or making progress. But when we made this, we kind of figured out, okay, how can we simplify all these things so kids can still have fun during the summer? So for presents, summer learning is for everybody. It's for students to learn, but it's also for families and friends to learn. So this may be a good time to learn ASL or start learning new signs or get more familiar with your child's AAC device. So learning can be for everyone. And then the library can be a good hotspot for the summer. But keeping in mind when going to the library, we don't want to force our kids to read certain books. Let them pick high interest books if they're interested in it. If it's way too high or way too low for them, it really doesn't matter. Let them read what they want to read. And whatever they're interested in, this is going to kind of facilitate their love of reading and their love of literacy. Same as if you picked out a book in the bookstore and somebody handed you another book. It's like, you have to read this one. No, maybe I want to read the other one. Same thing for kids. The next one is model making literacy a part of your everyday life. So maybe at night having a certain time where everybody in the family is reading a book. So if you're expecting your kids to look at books during the day, but maybe you're scrolling through your phone and then you're saying, no, you can't be on your iPad, it kind of feels not fair. So they're going to see what other people around them are doing. So maybe as a family, take a certain amount of time and everybody be reading books or everybody be working on literacy skills in some way or the other. So then they have that model of, oh, mom's reading, or my brother's reading, things like that. And then this kind of goes within that same thing, engaging with books together. Reading should be a fun thing. When you read books with your kids, this should be a super fun thing to do. And we don't just want to test them with questions. So if you're doing, reading a book with your child, instead of saying who, what, where, when, why, you already know the answers to those things. And that dynamic becomes not fun eventually. So ask them questions that you don't know what they're going to say or you don't know the answer to. Things like, I wonder what's going to happen next, or what would happen if, things like that. Make it more of a dialogue instead of a testing situation. We want this to be fun and enjoyable for both you and your child. And then there's a gazillion options for like things to set up to make reading fun. Make a fort, use flashlights to read. I've also seen book boxes, like taking like old Amazon boxes and letting them use markers to color the inside and sit down, and that's their reading box. You can also do the same thing with storage tubs. Make it fun, make them, oh, I can, this is their special place where they're going to read the book today. Things like that. It should feel fun. You should want them to like to read and not feel like they're getting quizzed and tested all of the time. I've included here a link. It's 15 Principles of Reading to Deaf Children. This is a really great resource if you get a chance to look at it. It kind of goes through, if your child is deaf, how do you read a book with them? What are some things you should include? And then we've also linked ASL story resources. Online, there's a ton of really great signed stories that we have linked here that can be fun for you and your child to watch together. Okay, so for the next one, access. So I'm kind of going to take this all in one hit. So use language resources for your child and yourself. Also, when you're introducing new language or when you're just talking to your kids about things, we don't want to, it's called linguistic overprotection. We don't want to assume, oh, that word's too hard for them, or, oh, they won't understand when if I say that. So the image I have here is, for example, if you sign or say bird, and every bird you come across, you just label that as bird, 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 bird. Their output is going to be limited to, oh, that's a bird, that's a bird, that's a bird, that's a bird. Even though in their mind, they could maybe have like 6 different birds, in their memory, but they don't have the output to describe them. So a good way to not overprotect them from language is a strategy called sandwiching. So what you would do is you could still say bird, you could sign the word bird, and then if you see a robin, you can finger spell robin and then sign bird again. You can also use this same approach with chaining if you want to do spoken English or model this on AAC. So that would look like maybe you could sign bird, finger spell robin, voice robin, model it on their AAC robin. Okay, so there's a lot of ways to make sure that the label for the word robin is accessible. All of these things, they are birds, but we can't just call everything a bird. Yeah, and lots of different words for signs and things. You don't want to just generalize, because in their mind, they could have this huge schema, this, huge imagery of birds, but we want them to be able to share that knowledge and not just have it stuck in their head. Another note is don't be scared of fingerspelling with your child. I know it seems overwhelming and, oh, well, they might not get it, or it's too quick, or it's too slow, the word's too long. No, so definitely do it. Fingerspelling recognition is a huge predictor of later reading success in deaf children. So are they going to pick up every single letter of the fingerspelled word? No, but the more you use it, the more they see it, the more they're going to start recognizing it. So don't be scared of using fingerspelling, and you'll be shocked at what they're going to start memorizing or what they'll start trying to copy. A quick example of this, my student, I always fingerspell lobby, L-O-B-B-Y, and I do it quick, but I've always done it. And then recently, that student, he came to me and said, I'm gonna go and fingerspelled, he went L, blah, 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 Y. But it was so close. He's understanding the concept and starting to recognize what that word meant. So, and again, I've been signing that word for a year and he's just now using it. So don't be scared of it. So another thing for access is maybe preparing for new or possibly challenging experiences. So one way to do that is social stories. So social stories are just previewing. It could be a book. It could be videos and pictures of where you're going. Maybe it's you're getting on an airplane, or you're visiting a new place, or you have a change in plans. Maybe you're going to a place that's very noisy. So something that is new or unexpected may be a good time for a social story. So it could be pictures and videos. It could just be discussing what's going on, but you could also make a physical book. And the book, it could be printed. It could also, I make social stories on Google Slides. And then it can be accessible on an iPad as well. But it's just preparing them to say, tomorrow you are, we are getting on a plane. Here's a picture of what the airport looks like. First, we're going to go in. Then we have to line up. Then we're going through security, and just showing pictures of what all those things are going to look like. And then as you read it, stopping to discuss what's going to happen. So then when they get to the airport, it's less overwhelming because they kind of have an idea of what to expect. So the links here are just how to write a social story. I know I went through that very quickly, but this link will kind of break down step-by-step things to include. I also linked low tech options. So that just means like symbols you can use or pre-made communication boards. And then this third link is pre-made and printable social stories. So they're pretty general, but there's a good one for like change in routine, or we're going to the park, or I need to make a new friend, things like that. Those are already pre-made. But my suggestion, I wouldn't go looking for a template on how to make the social story. I normally just go to Google Slides, put in the pictures I want, and put in the text I want. I think that's the easiest way to do it. Sarah, you can go to the next one. And then grace. So you don't have to sit down with your child and do flashcards of things and make sure they're writing and practicing and doing these like highly academic structured skills every day. We don't want that. Literacy is so many things. I put this graphic, it's Scarborough's reading rope. The first part, the red and yellow part, the decoding, phonological awareness, sight recognition, this is for hearing children. That will look a little bit different for deaf children. That's just one part, the sounding out the words, reading words. This blue-green part at the bottom, the vocabulary knowledge, background knowledge, language structures, literacy knowledge, verbal reasoning, all of those things are equally as important to reading and making meaning from text. And a big plus, all of those things can be done without doing this highly structured, we are learning how to read day. Okay, that can be done when you're going to the park. That can be done if you're taking a walk. That can be done if your child's helping you cook dinner. All of these things can be worked on without directly teaching them. Yeah, and it's funny, I talked to the interpreters before that, and we were talking about how to sign literacy. And I don't like the sign for just reading and writing because literacy is so many other things. So don't get strung up on, well, they need to sit down. We have to go through flashcards. They have to read these words. That maybe sometimes, but try to work on all of these other things. That's what's going to lead them towards higher comprehension, higher understanding, better vocabulary knowledge, etc. So our takeaway from this is summer learning is for everybody. Okay? This is a good time for everybody in the child's life, for the child, to maybe learn a new skill. And depending on your child, it could be learning how to do a read aloud with your child. For your child, it could be, okay, this week we're going to learn how to act out this storybook, and we're going to learn what it means to dress up and become a new character. We're going to learn all the signs for this book. It can be a ton of different things, but summer learning is not just for your child, it's for the whole family. And a couple of resource links that were kind of scattered throughout. The waterproof device cases that Christina talked about are linked here. The 15 principles for reading to deaf children, That's a really great one. It's super easy to read as well. You can read the whole thing in maybe 5 minutes. The reading rope, it's where I got that graphic from. You can kind of read about it, but I wouldn't harp too much. You don't have to memorize the whole thing. And then the ASL story resources are a great way to find good signed stories to make sure you're getting a good, credible signer who is using the right ASL signs. So that's a great resource too.
Thank you, Maddie, so much. We have some contact information here for you, which I'll go through in a moment, but we encourage you to take a few minutes to put any questions that you might have for any of our clinician team. Feel free to put a question into the chat or the Q&A, because we have a few minutes here at the end to go over that. While I let you think and reflect for a moment, I'll share that we do have a website where all of the Lunch and Learn programs are posted, the recordings, and I will put that in the chat as soon as I'm not sharing my screen. You can also follow us on Facebook for some updates and links and things, resources like that. And I do know that depending on where you're signing in from, if you're in an educational setting, your school year might be done. So congratulations, that's great. Some of you might be just wrapping up your school year like we are. You're almost there, you got this. The summer may be a time that you are thinking about designing professional development for your educational setting. Please do reach out if there are things that we might be able to support you with in that area. We do contract with school districts to provide professional development for teachers or therapists or ed teams, whatever it might look like. We're very happy to connect with you and design something that can meet your needs. I'm going to stop my share so I can see the chat and the Q&A more clearly. Yep. Oops, I don't have any options. Oh, there we go. Everything disappeared from me, but everybody's back. Okay, let me jump into my chat here and see what we might have missed. There were a number of questions about the presentation and links, and yes, we will be sharing the presentation. And as soon as I'm not coordinating this, I will throw that website for the Lunch and Learn recordings into the chat as well. We had a comment regarding Maddie's discussion on the bird visual with the linguistic overprotection. I find this so interesting, that linguistic overprotection and sandwiching. I see this so important in our AAC world to consider as well. Such great information. Thank you. If any of our clinicians want to jump in and comment on vocabulary development with AAC and not having just bird, bird, bird in your signing and finger spelling vocabulary, but in your AAC as well. Looks like Maddie's ready to go. Go ahead, Maddie.
Sure. Yeah. Another good thing to keep in mind too is we'll stick with our bird example, but it could be any category example, is you can meet with your child's SLP to set this up too, is if bird is your category, you want to look at how their AAC tracks too. So maybe it can go from animals to then birds to then woodpeckers, robins, sparrows, those things. And you can also model that tracking too as you move kind of down through those categories until getting what you want. Because that's a huge schema-based skill as well, to be able to get from all of those things.
Yes, I would just add to that, a lot of times when children are just starting out with their AAC systems, everybody says, it's too overwhelming for them. They don't know these words. They don't understand these words. They don't need these words. And the systems can be very, very basic. And just remembering that modeling and language exposure is really important if you ever expect them to learn the word. They're not going to learn it if they don't have access to it. So that's just something to keep in mind as well.
Thank you both. We had another comment saying this was great, practical and evidence-based examples of how to expand a child's vocabulary. Thank you for that feedback. We appreciate it. We hope that we did intend for these Lunch and Learns to be practical and applicable, and you could, leave at the end and have something ready to go that you could apply in your setting. So we're grateful to hear that feedback. All right, I'm going to jump over to our Q&A. We had a question. I work in Central America on an indigenous, very poor reservation. I have a new deaf child, 4 years old. What might be your first impulse to help this child and his family and community communicate? Christina?
Do you want to go
Sure.
first, Maddie? I would just say, I'm curious if they already have some sort of gesture or home sign communication happening. And if so, definitely continuing that, but also hopefully starting to expose the child to whatever sign language is used in that area. And it might not be a true sign language. It might be more of that pigeon or home signs. I'm also curious if they have access to pictures or objects that they could use for choice making, things to give the child some power and some control over their environment.
Yeah. I agree with Christina. I would see what sign language is being used in that area. There is a lot of times an assumption that American Sign Language is used all over the world. It's universal, but it's absolutely not. So depending on where you're at, look into the sign language that's used in the area. Hopefully, as he gets older, he'll be around more deaf peers and deaf role models. So, we wouldn't want to be teaching him American Sign Language if that's not the language of his region. So I double check on that. And again, same thing Christina said, seeing if there's any home signs already established and how those signs are being used to communicate wants, needs. That's what I'd focus on first, is signs like can that child let I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, I need the bathroom. Those things are what we kind of want to first establish within a language, and then look to label, everything else, but get an idea of that language level, and that can kind of guide, where you want to start, surface level, or can we jump way, way high? But there's that question could jumpstart an entire another lunch and learn, but I hope we gave you a couple things to start with or think about.
We can start next year's program with that topic, Maddie. The same individual who asked that question said, thanks. I'm a former interpreter and have been here for 9 years. Great. I would love to learn more about your experiences. It sounds really interesting. We have about a minute or two left. We do try to wrap by 12:45. So if there are other questions, I welcome you to put them in the chat or the Q&A. For those that were looking for the website with the recordings, it has been dropped into the chat. So hopefully that link works for you. Someone else is saying great information. Thank you so much, from Davao City in the Philippines. We have a very international audience today. That's so exciting. I did look at our registration list for all of our Lunch and Learn programs, and I think we had about maybe 10 different countries represented in Europe, Asia, South America, Central America, all across North America, Canada. We had quite individuals from all over, which we're really grateful for. So we hope to continue to expand the reach of the clinic and impact and connect with both families and professionals to support children who are deaf or hard of hearing or who have complex needs. Thank you all so much for attending today. Today's recording will be available within about a week or so. I like to make sure that it's visually clear and our interpreter is nicely visually available. So it usually takes us a little longer than just sharing a link because we like to make sure all the information is there. Please do reach out if there are ways that we might support your district or your team or your family. We wish you all a summer that's thriving, not just surviving, and we hope to see you in the fall. Thank you.